Okay, so we talked about, dopamine, we talked about norepinephrine, we talked about acetylcholine, we talked about serotonin. These are some of the classical neurotransmitters, right, that have been studied intensively, and you probably heard about these particular neurotransmitters before. It turns out there are many more neurotransmitters. There are, for example, histamine is a neurotransmitter that you may have heard about, because you can take a drug called an antihistamine, right, which will help to relieve the pressure in your nose when you have a cold. There are two neurotransmitters I want to discuss next, actually, that are both what we refer to as amino acid neurotransmitters, because they're really closely related to amino acids, more closely related to amino acids than the catecholamines or to serotonin, even though those are also manufactured from amino acids. And these two neurotransmitters, glutamate and the second one is GABA, are actually kind of the workhorse neurotransmitters in your brain. They actually carry the majority of chemical messages across synapses in your nervous system. Glutamate is this amino acid neurotransmitter. It's abbreviated GLU, right? And it's pretty much the primary excitatory neurotransmitter in your brain, in the central nervous system. And what that means is where glutamate is released, right, at a synapse, the postsynaptic receptors tend to be fast-acting, right? So they're ionotropic, right? They tend to bind glutamate, and when they shift their position, they open a channel that allows for some kind of a depolarizing current. So, for example, they can open a channel that would let sodium go through, right? Sodium would come into the cell and depolarize it towards threshold, and so the postsynaptic neuron would be more likely to fire an action potential in response. So glutamate is pretty much the primary excitatory neurotransmitter in your brain. There's another one called aspartate. We're going to focus on glutamate. It's less well studied. And terminology, neurons that release glutamate are actually called glutamatergic, which is almost a painful expression, neurons. And they're found in many, many areas of the brain.